really left on time, and nobody's used to that. But I don't think we should punish people who come on time and make them wait around for people who are late. So I am thrilled that you're here early, and I'm thrilled that I have enough snacks for you, because the early birds should get the snacks. If you didn't get one, please help yourself. And what you're eating is a cashew herb pate. That's a fancy name for soaked cashews with ginger in the food processor and a little parsley. And I think that's, oh, and a little Tabasco sauce. The original recipe that inspired me had really hot peppers, and I don't like working with hot peppers because my hands invariably go to my eyes, and I'm afraid that I've touched the seed, and hot peppers scare me. So instead of hot peppers, I'm also into doing things as quickly as possible in the kitchen. So what I do is I take a jar of Tabasco sauce, and if I want it mild, I'll put 3 to 5 shakes in, and if I want it stronger, I'll put 5 to 10 shakes in, and if I want it hot, I'll put a lot of shakes in. And it does the same thing as working with hot pepper, takes a lot less time, and Tabasco sauce lasts a long time. In fact, when I was a kid, there was a joke. It's no longer that funny because I use Tabasco sauce now. But I heard a comedian when I was a kid say there was a couple married so long they were on their second bottle of Tabasco sauce. So, these days, that's not true. I can remember buying them every few years. But I mean, we go through them now. Whereas I think when I was growing up, there really was only one jar of Tabasco sauce my entire life that stayed in our kitchen. Anyway, so I was starting to ask, is anyone here a vegetarian? Not a vegan yet, but a vegetarian. And anybody here who's still the way I was for 35 years and eating everything? Anyone here still an omnivore? Yes, don't be shy. We all started there. It's fine. And I congratulate you for coming to a conference where you'd learn about vegetarianism, because that's very brave of you. Anyway, my first book for vegetarians, please help yourself to a snack on the way in. My first book for vegetarians was How to Eat Like a Vegetarian, Even If You Never Want to Be One. Now, this is a vegan cookbook. It's totally vegan, 100% vegan. But when I wrote this about 6 years ago, people were afraid of the word vegan. People just wouldn't look at it. People was like, I'll never be a vegan. So we just called it How to Eat Like a Vegetarian. But in fact, everything in it's vegan. And more than just recipes, this book has ideas and lists. Lists of 10 ways to eat more greens, 10 ways to eat more beans, 10 ways to eat sandwiches, 10 ideas for lunch, 10 things to eat when there's nothing in the house. So this has a lot of different lists in it, and it ends with recipes, and all the recipes are vegan. Neither my co-author nor I are huge recipe creators. We go to our favorite cookbook authors and ask for permission to put their recipes in our books. So most of the recipes in our books are not original. They come from, with permission, which the publisher makes you pay for, but with permission from other cookbook writers, we do have a lot of fabulous recipes in both books. So it's a few years later, and we realize it's okay to use the V word now, the other V word. So this book is called Never Too Late to Go Vegan, because Carol Adams and I and Ginny Messina, among us, have more than 75 years of being vegan. We've each been a vegan for 25 years or more. And so we thought we have a lot of knowledge to share, and we know a lot of people who went vegan after they were 50. So we wrote this book specifically for people 50 and older who want to go vegan or want to move toward veganism and are afraid of it or never heard of it or are intimidated by it or don't know where to start. So this book covers everything from nutrition for the over 50, because Ginny Messina has a PhD, master's in public health, and is a registered dietitian. Carol Adams is one of the deepest thinkers I know. She wrote The Sexual Politics of Meat, a brilliant book that's 20 years old now. Anyway, she's a very deep thinker. Ginny's a scientist, and I'm just someone with a lot of experience of shortcuts in the kitchen. I don't like to spend a lot of time in the kitchen. So when you read this book, you can tell which recipes are the ones I contributed, because they're usually really quick and have fewer than 5 ingredients. The ones that Ginny and Carol came up with can be much more complex. In fact, I'm going to share with you a little bit about the creation of the book, because we had some internal strife as co-authors writing this book. I wanted the recipes to be easy, easy, easy. Carol said they have to have some complex recipes so people moving here don't think they have to give up chocolate cakes and gourmet dinners and all these other things. So we have recipes for making your own seitan from scratch. We have recipes for decadent cakes, 3 different kinds. We have recipes here that, frankly, I will never cook, because I'm on a fairly heart-healthy diet, and these recipes are great vegan diets, but they do use oil, and they do use some product that I don't use, like mayonnaise and cream cheese, all vegan. But there are products in some of these recipes that are more mainstream than the way I have evolved to eat. I started out as an I'll eat anything if it's vegan, and now I'm moving toward more health-conscious vegan. So there's something for everyone in this book. There's plenty of health-conscious recipes and plenty of decadent, you'll impress your relatives and they won't know it's vegan kind of recipes too. So anyway, we were arguing over the recipes, and then we also had a conflict in how much of the animal cruelty to present. Because many of us who went vegan can't stand the way animals are treated when they're raised for food. Please help yourself when you come in, if you haven't, to a sample up here of food that's going to run out soon. So if you're here now, eat it before it runs out. Anyway, so there was some internal strife about tell the whole truth or just allude to the truth or sort of sugarcoat the truth. We opted to tell the whole truth. So you will read in here about animal cruelty, and you will read about what happens to the male chicks. Does anyone here not know what happens to the male chicks at a hatchery? Raise your hand. Most of us didn't know. I didn't know for decades. All laying hens, hens who are raised to lay their eggs, and we take the eggs, they're not raised for their meat. So their flesh is not consumed, at least when they're young. Hens come from hatcheries. They're big factories where the birds are just laying eggs and the eggs are hatched. Those little chicks are sexed as soon as they come out of their egg, a shell. And there's someone called a sexer. It's an assembly line, like a conveyor belt. And they just pick up each chick, male, female, male, female, male, female. If it happens to be female, she's a layer. That's what they want. And they ship them to people that want laying hens, or backyard people who want to raise hens in their backyard. The male chicks are not valuable because their flesh is they're not bred for their flesh, and they can't lay eggs. So they're killed the day they're hatched. And the way they're killed is they are thrown into a giant industrial-sized macerating machine. And they're just ground up alive the day they're hatched. So anyone who thinks there's no killing in the egg industry doesn't understand what happens to the male chicks at the hatchery. And virtually every laying hen begins her life at a hatchery in the United States today. So on ethical grounds, I stopped eating eggs when I found that out, that they're killing the male chicks. Also, is anyone here familiar with Dr. Michael Greger, G-R-E-G-E-R? If you're not, please go to his website. It's called nutritionfacts.org. F-A-C-T-S, facts, nutritionfacts.org. He has a daily email he will send you that's either a short essay or a short video. And he talks about how industry lies to us. He had one recently, and you can go to his website and look up any of these, how the egg industry wants you to eat more eggs. So they compare eating eggs to like eating, a pound of steak a day, and they say eggs are a healthy alternative. Eggs are a great source of protein. But he points out what they're comparing them to. And they're really still an awful source of protein, not just because of the cruelty, but the cholesterol is very high, the saturated fat is very high. He basically points out how industry is not always in our best interest. And he also reads every peer-reviewed journal that has to do with health, from the Diabetes Journal, the Heart Journal, Obesity, the Journal of American Medical Association. He reads every single journal that has anything to do with diet and health, and he finds the articles that are relevant, and he condenses them for us and tells us what we need to know. So when you read the newspaper about a new study and you're on his website, within a week or two, he usually will have a critique of that study, and you'll learn the truth, because the newspaper just reads the press release that industry puts out. So if the egg industry says it's okay now to eat 2 eggs a week, and that makes headlines and there are stories everywhere, I trust Michael Greger for telling me what the real study said, and how they're coming up with the fact that now it's okay to eat 2 eggs a week. To me, it's never okay, but that's an ethical issue. But from the health issue, he tells us the truth, and he explains it in a way we can understand. So that's very exciting. Nutrition Facts, it's one word, F-A-C-T-S, nutritionfacts.org. And Dr. Michael Greger works for the Humane Society of the United States, though his politics, I think, are very different from what they've been doing. Anyway, he's a committed health fanatic MD. And in his early days, before he worked for Humane Society, he made his own videos, and he would wear a chef's cap and a white coat with a stethoscope with a chef's cap on. He was very corny. His sense of humor can be corny, but he's a brilliant man. Where was I? Eggs, websites. As long as we're talking about websites, I will recommend 2 other websites that everyone should be on. One of them is bayareaveg.org. Bayareaveg.org is just to keep up to date with what's happening in the greater Bay Area. I mean, everything from Sacramento to San Jose or even further south. They tell you what's happening that week, that weekend, protests happening, new restaurants opening, events like this happening. It's a great way to just stay in touch. You never have to contribute to it. You just can read it. And it's a great way to know what's going on in the Bay Area. BayAreaVeg.org.
And the other was nutritionfacts.org?
Yes, nutritionfacts.org and Bay Area Veg.
You can also apply to be on their email for free, and they send you all that information in email.
Right, so once you're on the website in both places, both Dr. Greger's site and Bay Area Veg, it may be BAVeg.org, but if you Google Bay Area Veg, you'll come up with it. They changed their name. I think it might be BA Veg. But anyway, if you're on those websites, sign up for free emails, because then you'll just, and rather than get it every time something new happens, you can get a digest like I do. So just once a day, you get everything that's been posted. Otherwise, you're interrupted all day when anything new comes on. So could somebody close that back door, please? Thanks so much. It's not that...
I'm sorry. That was B as in boy, A.
Yeah, BAVeg.org, but it might be BayAreaVeg.org, and if you just do a Google search on Bay Area Veg, you'll come up with it. Someone named Tammy runs it, and I hope she's here today, because I'd like to hug her and thank.
She moved to the valley, so I don't think she lives around here.
But she may have come to Veg Fest. This is a big deal. Yeah. But anyway, it's a marvelous resource for us. So Michael Greger and that one, and then I'll confess, much to my co-author's chagrin, I am not on Facebook. They taught me how to do it. They set me up with an account. I just do not have time to get on Facebook. But the book has its own Facebook page. So you can read what's happening with the book and what's happening. I don't know nothing's happening with the book. People are reading it. I mean, what happens to a book? But anyway, I don't understand I understand for getting a big message out, Facebook can reach a lot of people. So I just tell my co-authors what I want them to know, and they post it on the book's Facebook page. I don't have to deal with Facebook. I have real friends. I don't have the kinds of... I don't know, there's something about hundreds of friends that you don't know wishing you a happy birthday that seems creepy to me. But anyway, I called this talk Why It's Never Too Late to Go Vegan. And basically, the short answer is, please help yourself to a snack on the way in. The short answer is, animals are dying and they don't need to be dying. And every time we choose a meal that doesn't harm animals, we're saving lives. I mean, to me, that's just the short answer. You can write books about it, but you can just tell the truth in one sentence. Every time we choose a vegan meal, we're reducing suffering and saving lives. Now, there are very few other things you can do in life that have such an immediate impact. We elect people hoping they'll do the right thing in Congress, but often they're so compromised they can't, even if they were elected to do the right thing. We try to change local laws to make the right thing happen, but that's a long, tedious process, and we don't always get the law that's the most effective in helping people. But when we choose a vegan meal just for the next meal, immediately a life is saved. Immediately there's one less chicken being killed, or one less fish being killed, or one less cow being murdered. So to me, the short answer is it's never too late to go vegan, because the minute you stop, you're saving lives. Now, a lot of people go vegan for health reasons, and I'm not going to dwell on that. Our book has a huge chapter on the advantages for people over 50 to go vegan, but the science doesn't really support veganism any more than vegetarianism. You do reap huge benefits by giving up eating the flesh of animals, but to me, the milk and the dairy and the other animal products are worse for us than the flesh. Worse for the animals anyway. I would rather see people give up dairy than give up meat. And it breaks my heart. I was out with a friend the other day who told me she's moving toward vegan, and we went to get a coffee at a coffee shop, and very casually, she went over and poured cow's milk into her coffee without thinking. It was just a habit. And I didn't say anything, which was big for me. This is huge for me. I kept my mouth shut because I value her friendship. But the next time we went out, as we were walking into the coffee shop, I said to her, would you mind getting soy milk instead of cow's milk? She said, of course not. And you had to ask for the soy milk. It wasn't out there in a pitcher with the half and the 2% and the... So when she ordered the milk, she said, I want soy milk with it. And he said, no problem. And he took out the soy milk, shook it up, and gave it to her and said, put as much as you want in. And I was so pleased with myself for not having said anything the first time, but for cutting her off at the pass the second time. And just before the way people casually use animal products is what's hurting the animals. If people knew, a lot of people, not all people, if people knew, they would stop hurting animals. So it's as simple as switching cow's milk for soy milk at a coffee shop, or in your cereal, or when you're cooking. It's really simple to use almond milk or soy milk or rice milk or hemp milk or any of those other combinations of them. And it's saving lives. The dairy cow has the worst life of any animal farmed for food. And even on humane dairies, even when they call it humane, To me, there's nothing humane about stealing a baby from his mother within 2 days of when he's born. I mean, that's heartbreaking. And Kim Sterla, a friend who we consulted with a lot for this book, who runs Animal Place, she has seen and heard and told me about how the mother screams for the baby and the baby cries for the mother. They make horrible noises. They're just bellowing for each other, running up and down the fence, looking for each other. Is anyone here a parent? Anyone have a baby in their life here? You know that tender bond between a mother and a baby. Well, it's no less true for a cow and her calf. And if the calf is male, that's a veal calf. There was a campaign 30 years ago to boycott veal. But unless you're boycotting cheese and yogurt and ice cream and milk also, it's supporting the veal industry, because the dairy industry is the veal industry. The veal calf is the male offspring of a dairy cow. And these cows have a 9-month gestation just like humans. And then after the baby is born, the baby's taken from the mother within 48 hours so that we can take the milk. And worse than that, she is then impregnated again. So her entire life is one pregnancy after another, so that the milk will continue to flow. It's really sad. And in addition, they dock their tails and they brand them. I mean, it's just, the whole thing is just horrible. So dairy to me is one of the cruelest foods. I actually have a button that I sometimes wear that says, "Milk comes from a grieving mother." Milk comes from a grieving mother. And when I first heard that phrase many, many years ago, I thought it meant that even if you're grieving and you die and your baby dies in childbirth, you're still going to produce milk because your body is there to produce milk. It took me decades of being a vegan to realize what it means is every dairy cow is grieving for her offspring. And they just keep getting her pregnant and taking her milk and taking the baby away. Yes?
I take your point, it sounds bad enough with even one pregnancy, but why does that need to happen a second pregnancy? It won't any mammal keep lactating if the milk is utilized?
That's a very good question. It comes down to efficiency and getting more milk. These cows are bred to give maximum. Producing more cows, right. So they're producing veal. They're doing it to have the male offspring, which is the veal market. And the reason veal flesh is so valued, they call it tender because it's a baby. The reason it's tender is the veal calf is not allowed to move or walk or develop any muscle. He's confined for his whole life. The veal calf is a male baby who's not allowed out of that pen for his whole life. And then they kill him as a baby, and we eat the flesh and call it veal. So I have a policy with my husband. I won't go to a restaurant that serves veal. I mean, I'm a hypocrite because I go to restaurants that serve cheese all the time. But I draw the line at veal because at least it's a conscious choice and I can tell the restaurant, I would love to eat here, but you have veal on your menu. I'm sorry, I won't. And I write letters all the time or drop off postcards that say that at restaurants that I'm thinking of going to. So there are plenty. The good news is, more than ever before, there are plenty of Italian restaurants that don't serve veal. Lots of them. Pizza places, Italian restaurants. If anyone's ever in Fairfax, California, I live in Fairfax. If anyone's ever up there, there's a marvelous Italian restaurant called Sorella's. It means sisters in Italian. And they don't serve any veal on principle. And they have good vegan food on the menu. And there's one dish called a butternut squash ravioli that has no cheese in it, which is really unusual for a ravioli at an Italian restaurant. And they usually serve it with sage butter. But because my husband and I come in so often and they know us and our friends have gone and asked for it, they will happily make it with olive oil. And if you order it primavera style, you get tons of fabulous vegetables with a vegan ravioli. And I just love eating there because the chef won't serve veal on principle. And it's otherwise a full service, lots of cheese. But anyway, it's a good choice. So the short answer is why it's never too late to go vegan is because you're saving lives immediately. Now, we talked about the baby male chicks at a hatchery, and we talked about the dairy cows also. Pigs are very, very fun, friendly, affectionate, smart animals. Kim Sterla, same woman who runs Animal Place, loves pigs. They're her favorite animal. She just adores them. And many of these pigs are rescued from the slaughterhouse, so they're on their way to slaughter, and she rescues them. She has them like pets. They grow to be enormous. I mean, they weigh hundreds and hundreds of pounds. They're enormous animals. But when she drives up, they run to greet her. And they want a belly rub like a dog does. And they'll follow her around the way a dog does. So the very expression spare ribs turns my stomach because we don't have spare ribs. Adam didn't have a spare rib. That story is all folklore about Eve being made from Adam. Pigs don't have spare ribs. There's no such thing as extra ribs. We use all of them. They're all important. So the idea of eating a pig is just, it's like eating your dog. Speaking of which, There's a marvelous book by Melanie Joy. Her last name is Joy. And the book is called Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows. Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows. And the book is brilliant because what she says in this book is, everyone knows that vegetarianism is an ideology. It's a belief system. Only some people believe it. People don't realize that eating meat is equally a belief system. And every single culture in the world has foods that are on the menu and foods that are taboo. In our country, we don't eat dogs. We don't eat horses. In other countries, they don't eat cows and they don't eat pigs. And this is a cultural phenomenon. And she names it carnism. Carnism is the invisible belief system that it's okay to eat certain animals but not others. And it's every bit as much a belief system as vegetarianism is a belief system. But unless you name it, it's invisible. And what Carol Adams points out in this book that I love, I'm going to talk a little bit more about my book. If you're eating and you're at a table eating and no one else is in the room with you, you're just an eater. You're just an eater. But as soon as a vegan shows up in that room, suddenly you're a meat eater. It calls attention to what you're eating that went unnamed and unnoticed. And you don't have to say a word. You just show up and they know that you're a vegetarian or a vegan and you're in the room. Suddenly people are like, I hardly ever eat red meat anymore. You know, this is the first red meat I've had in months. People become very apologetic for what they're eating. You didn't say a word. They just know that you've made a choice that they know is the right choice and they're feeling squeamish in your presence. Well, we talk a lot about that in this book because when people do go vegan, sometimes issues come up with friends and with family that make you think, maybe I shouldn't have done this because it's important to be friendly and it's important to have people around me and have people with me. Anyway, we go into a lot of detail about how to avoid being disfriended or uninvited to events. There are couples who report that when they go vegan, they stop getting invited out to dinner with their friends because they're deemed difficult. They embarrass their friends when they ask the waiter, can this be made without the milk? Can you make this without the butter? So we talk about those issues and we teach you ways to get over them. We also teach ways to give up dairy. We have a whole double-page spread on how to give up dairy. Raise your hand if dairy was the last thing or the most challenging thing you found you wanted to give up when you went vegan. I certainly did. In fact, when I went vegan, it was from a book called Fit for Life. I was the editor of a book in 1985 called Fit for Life. It was a diet book by Harvey and Marilyn Diamond. And the theme of that book was you could have as much fruit and vegetables as you wanted at any meal, any time. But at each meal, you could only have one non-fruit or vegetable food. They called it a non-high water content food. But anyway, it restricted your eating to just one non-fruit or vegetable. So if you were going to have a hamburger, you could have a hamburger but no bun. If you wanted bread, you could have as much bread as you want but no meat on the bread, just vegetables. It was dietary restriction, but it was getting you to cut down on eating it was getting you to cut down on anything that wasn't a fruit or vegetable. Anyway, in that book, I figured, okay, cheese is going to be my one non-vegetable thing. So I used to buy zucchini, and I'd slice it really thin the long way, and I'd put strips of cheese on it and melt it in my toaster oven. But what I did was I would take out that zucchini, scrape off the cheese, and eat it, and use the same slices like 10 times until I ran out of cheese. I just went over and over again because I was addicted to cheese, and I love cheese. Most of us do. And for good reason. Milk is made for babies to be addicted to it. You want the baby to keep going back to the mother's breast. So it's made to make the baby want it. It has morphocaseins in it, which are like morphine, according to Neil Barnard. It's like an addictive property. Anyway, I finally had to eat the zucchini. And then when I moved to San Francisco, and people would say, you're a vegetarian? I go, yeah, since last year. I was so proud of myself. They say, but you're still eating dairy and eggs? And I was like, get out of here. Leave me alone. How dare you? I made the biggest change of my life. I pissed off my entire family. And you're telling me I didn't do enough? And I was like, leave me alone. I'm a vegetarian. I don't want to take the next step. I was very, very angry that people were telling me that wasn't enough. And then I read John Robbins' book, Diet for a New America. And the day I finished that book, I was a vegan. I just couldn't. I would look in the dairy at a store and all I would see were cows crying for their mothers. All I would see were farm workers underpaid doing mean things because the job was mean. It was like he has more compassion than anyone I know for animals, for people in the animal industry. John Robbins is one of my heroes. Anyway, so I became a vegan and gave up the cheese. And we have not only an entire section in here on how to give up cheese, but we have great cheese substitute recipes. And we talk about what the revelation was for us. Carol Adams realized you can use tofu as a cheese substitute and flavor it and do things with it. Now, I have very exciting news. You may have already heard this, but I am absolutely thrilled beyond belief. I think we're at a new level of veganism. This is going to change everything. Miyoko Schinner, she's speaking here today. She has a new company called Miyoko's Kitchen, and she produces plant-based cheeses that are so much like dairy cheese, so much like cruel cheese, so much like traditional hurt the cow and have lots of cholesterol cheese. No one can taste the difference. She was once at a big event, a big corporate event that was like a fancy food show where they were going to be announcing her new vegan cheeses. And she had prepared enough for like 1,000 people. It was like a big conference. And they accidentally served hers out of order. They served her cheese when they were supposed to be serving some gourmet local farmer's cheese. Nobody realized it wasn't dairy cheese. Thousands of cheese aficionados were gathered for this party, and they served her cheese by mistake, and no one knew the difference. She has 8 different varieties of cheese, and the big news is her new company is up and operating. You can order it now online. She'll have a retail store early next year in my town, Fairfax. It keeps getting better. I can't believe I've lived there 23 years, and now we're going to have a vegan cheese shop right in town. This is like heaven to me. But her cheeses are phenomenal. Don't miss her. She's speaking today. She made mostly out of nuts, not exclusively, all kinds of nuts. But she also ferments her. She uses kombucha, or she uses cultured yogurt, vegan yogurt. The cheese is fermented, and that's the new breakthrough. Most vegan cheeses don't have that taste, that's fermented taste. And what we talk about when we say how to give up cheese, eating more fermented food helps you lose your craving for cheese. So sauerkraut's a good choice, and kimchi is a good choice. Anything fermented, miso is a good choice. Anything that's been fermented, even vinegar, is a good choice to help you get over that craving for umami that cheese gives you. But Miyoko's cheeses, if you go to miyokoskitchen.com, you can order right now. I sent my mother the gift package. It was $100. It was like a sample of everything Miyoko makes. My mother called and left a message on my voicemail that said, "That's the best cheese I ever ate in my life." And she said, "I have to ration myself because I want to eat the whole thing." And I said, "Which flavor did you take?" And she said it was the country kitchen. And I said, "Well, taste the other one." She goes, "Oh no, I'm going to do them one at a time. I want to finish this one." So that was on the answering machine, and I called her back. And she called a second time. She'd already left a message on the answering machine. She's not a vegetarian or a vegan. She left an answer on the answering machine. Then I called her, and she talked to me. She called a second time to say, "I just had it again. It's so good. I can't believe how good it is." She goes, "Find out how long it lasts in the refrigerator." I said, "It probably lasts as long as dairy cheese, probably a few weeks or maybe a month or so." She goes, find out, because I want to save it for when Linda comes, my sister. So I said, "I'll send you another package for when Linda comes." So my sister called me the other day and said, "Don't send the cheese when I'm there. I don't want it." I said, "Okay." And my mother said, "When she leaves, send me another package." That's what she said. So it's not for everybody. My sister doesn't want to try it, but if you can see Miyoko, I think she's speaking right after me.
Yes, at 12:15.
At 12:15.
Over here.
In the big room, the auditorium. She is phenomenal, and her new cheese. Anyway, so even though giving up cheese feels like a challenge to us, now there are ways to make your own cheese that's really good, or buy Miyoko's. Now, I told you earlier, those who were here earlier found out I am very, very lazy in the kitchen. If I can find a faster way to do something, I will find a faster way to do something. Once Miyoko started making her cheese, I stopped trying to make her cheese. But how many entrepreneurs, before they start their business, write a cookbook with every single one of their secrets and recipes in it, so you can make your own? And if you're like me and you're lazy and you don't want to make your own, now you can just buy it already made from her.
I got her book too.
Her book is terrific, but it's time consuming. You have to soak the nuts, you have to wait, you have to get something fermented, so she does it for you. I mean, this is not an ad for Miyoko. I'll talk more about my book too, but I just want to say, if you get a chance to hear her, by all means hear her. She's brilliant and kind and funny. She's just Is she next? Yeah, but in the big room. She's in the auditorium. The board room? The auditorium. She's in the auditorium. Anyway, that's then, this is now.
What's your feeling about diet cheese? You don't like that?
I loved diet cheese when it came out because it melted. I could make grilled cheese sandwiches. I could put it on top of things. And now that I've had Miyoko's cheese, there's no comparison. Diet cheese, and someone told me it's pronounced Daya. I don't know, but someone who knows the owner said it's Daya. Anyway, that cheese is like the sliced American cheese versus artisanal, homemade, delicious real cheese. So I love Daya, and I think Daya has transformed the pizza places. There are dozens of pizza places where you can order vegan pizza with cheese now. So that's huge. That gets people eating kinder food. They're not hurting cows when they order the vegan pizza.
Plant-based pizza in San Jose.
There's plant-based pizza. I'm saying you can go to a lot of mainstream.
The name of the pizza place is plant-based pizza.
Plant-based pizza is the name of it, because if you go to Pizzerina Uno, they have vegan cheese. A me cheese, right. They're all offering the diet cheese pizza, and I think that's huge. And when it first came out, it was a miracle. I loved it. But now they make block cheese, too. They used to just have the shredded ones. The block cheese doesn't work for me because it's too much cheese in my mouth at once. The shredded one, you sprinkle on, and it melts. So, yeah, I used it for the first couple of years it was out. I'd make lasagna with it. I'd make my own tofu ricotta, which is really easy. The recipe's in the book. Tofu ricotta is just crumbled tofu with lemon juice, garlic, and a little miso, and it tastes like cheese, and it's for ricotta. But then when Daya came out, I added the mozzarella to the ricotta, so it was like a really thick cheese pizza, and it was all vegan. In fact, when a friend, I'm going back many years, but when I had friends who had babies, this was before I was a vegan, I would always make 2 lasagnas and bring them for the freezer for the mom. But now that I have a vegan, no one I know has had a baby since I knew about vegan lasagna, so I make it once in a while, but I eat much more simply than that now. So anyway, we have a recipe in here for vegan lasagna. And in the first book, too, because everyone loves that recipe. So, how long do I have? I don't even know how long I'm supposed to speak. Till noon? Seriously? I have another hour? Oh.
Yeah, the first session gets 90 minutes in all the rooms, and then the rest of the sessions get an hour.
Wow.
11:02 right now.
It's 11:02 and I have till 12?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. This is great.
Talk fast.
No, I can talk more slowly. I can talk more slowly. So I want to learn more about who's here before I keep going. Raise your hand if you were a vegan before you were 40. Okay, put your hand down. How about if you were a vegan before you were 30? Anybody? 3, 4, great. And anybody who was a vegan before he or she was 50? Anybody after 50 become a vegan? Wow, good for you, good for you. Okay, so we wrote this book because there are some health differences between people over 50 and people under 50. And basically, I'm going to summarize very quickly what's an in-depth, long chapter with a lot of chemicals and, science in it. Basically, over 50, we need more calcium and we need more vitamin D and we need more protein. I just told you an entire chapter in like one sentence. But we tell you how to get it, and it's really important to know that there is absolutely nothing wrong with animal-based protein, with plant-based protein. It's just as good. There's no such thing as food combining. You don't need to combine your food. Plant-based protein is just as good as animal-based protein. In fact, I'm going to read to you 5, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to tell you 5 myths that we bust in this book. And the first is that vegetarian foods need to be combined to provide a complete protein. Frances Moore LePay wrote a book called Diet for a Small Planet back in the 1970s, yeah. And she said you need to combine proteins to get all the amino acids. She has subsequently found out that it's not true, and she's sorry she ever started that myth because everybody got afraid now that you couldn't eat rice without beans and you couldn't eat, this without that. Your body can combine it inside you. If you're eating a variety of foods, you will be fine. You get plenty of protein. There are very few people who have protein deficiency in this country. Most people in this country know someone who's had cancer. Most people know someone who's had heart disease. Most people know someone who's had a stroke. Most people don't know anyone who suffered from protein deficiency. Unless you have a wasting disease where you can't maintain your own body weight, unless you have a wasting disease, it's virtually impossible if you're eating enough calories to maintain your weight, and usually we're eating way more than maintain it. But if you're eating enough calories to maintain your weight, you can't have a protein deficiency. So we don't really have to worry about deficiency diseases in our country. We're having diseases of excess, too much of the bad stuff. The only thing we do have, I'll get to your question in a second. The only thing we don't eat enough of as a country is fiber. Most of us, the number one over-the-counter medicine is a supplement that's just fiber. It's just like fiber supplement because people aren't eating food with fiber. People are eating processed food with no fiber in it, not enough fresh fruits and vegetables, and they're not getting enough fiber, so we are a very constipated nation. We really are. People spend more time in the bathroom. People have things called bathroom reading. I mean, who has time to read in the bathroom? I guess, if you don't have enough fiber in your diet, you're spending a lot more time in the bathroom than people who don't. And vegans go through toilet paper like nobody's business. Has anybody seen that Oprah show? About 2 or 3 years ago, Oprah challenged her entire staff, to go vegan for a week. And they couldn't stop talking about how much toilet paper they went through. Like suddenly they were going to the bathroom 2 or 3 times a day. Well, Michael Greger points out the more often you poop, the lower the risk you are for most of the major diseases that kill Western people. The healthier your bowel system is, the less likely you are to get cancer and heart disease and stroke, because you're cleaning out the system and you're scrubbing it with that fiber. That was an image that Harvey Diamond wrote in Fit for Life. He said, we all wash the outside of our cars, but how often do we wash the inside of our bodies? He said, when you eat fiber, it's like Roto-Rooter, like brushes cleaning you out. And that's really, really healthy. It's really, really healthy to go to the bathroom as often as you can. So yeah, we use more toilet paper, and we poop faster. This woman had a question.
Yeah, you talk at all about thyroid deficiencies.
Fiber deficiency? Oh, thyroid deficiencies. I don't think we do talk about thyroid deficiencies.
So it is a large problem. There's hyper and there's less. And so I was a vegan for a year and vegetarian for a long time. And when I examined my diet, most of the things I was eating was actually suppressing the thyroid.
Suppressing your thyroid?
Yeah, and the cure for it is they give you a pill that's like derived from, I think it's the lung of the cow. And you have to take it pretty much the rest of your life.
Wow. Uh-huh.
There are more women susceptible to it. So I also thought, well, it comes to the cow meat, I should eat some dairy. So I completely switched and I did cure it in a sense. I still watch it, but it's other issues too.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know what the numbers are. I don't know how many vegans you can look at to see what
Right.
they have.
Right. I haven't heard a lot about that, but I will say this. I know there are people who say they can't thrive on a vegan diet. It could be thyroid issues. It could be something else. I have never known anyone who has seen Alan Goldhammer, who's in True North Health in Santa Rosa. I don't know anyone for whom he couldn't improve the diet, whether it's vegan or vegetarian. He's one of the smartest people I know in the health field. And as a diagnostician, I always tell my husband, if you ever can't find out what's wrong with me, get me to Alan Goldhammer. Alan Goldhammer. And he's in Santa Rosa at a place called True North Health. It's mostly a fasting center where they fast you on either water or juice, but they also teach you how to eat healthy. But he is a brilliant diagnostician. And his sense of humor is not all what he thinks he's funnier than he is, so you have to bear with him. But he's brilliant, so you just put up with a sense of humor and you get the brilliance. But he's brilliant, and he works with a lot of MD. He's not an MD, but he works with Michael Clapper and... He's a chiropractor, but he works with brilliant MDs, so he has everyone on staff helping. But he is one of the best diagnosticians I've ever heard. He has found bizarre, rare things in people, and he finds ways to help you work with them around diet. So I recommend him, and I wish you luck. And I honor anyone who doesn't thrive as a vegan. I, too, wouldn't stay on this diet if I didn't feel good on it. So you do need to find out what's wrong.
So yeah, just on the road, yeah, it felt fantastic.
Uh-huh. Right.
And then the other supplement that was huge for me was seaweed. I had a lot of seaweed.
Seaweed, yeah.
But the hardest time was where I really just couldn't function was when I was menstruating.
I understand. Well, this is a book for women over 50, so we don't go into that. We don't really talk about
You're talking about converting younger people and dealing with that issue.
Right.
You're losing blood. You're not eating protein.
Right, but that's it. We do need to eat protein, and we talk about how to get protein sources as a vegetarian. It's not just soybeans. I mean, soy is overrated because the soy industry has good PR. I mean, soy is very good for you, but all beans are good for you. All beans. And if you can't tolerate beans, start with the tiny beans. Start with yellow split peas. They're pink when you buy them, actually, and they turn yellow when you cook them. But the red those tiny little lentils, rather. Start with the red lentils, and then go on to split peas, and then go on to green split peas, and then go on to green lentils. And slowly you build up a tolerance in your gut. Your flora actually changes. Your gut flora changes as you eat more of the good foods. So there might be a transition period where you have a lot of gas or you're not comfortable, but that goes away because your body gets used to eating the right foods. So you can adapt. Speaking of which, I find this, we're going back to dairy cows for just a minute, because I find it miraculous that the milk of any mammal, including humans, including cows, camels, dogs, any mammal, the milk that's produced after having a baby, the chemical composition of that milk changes over time because the body knows when the baby was born. So the mother's milk for a newborn has a certain ratio of carbohydrates and sugars and fats and protein, and that ratio evolves as the baby gets older. So when a 1-year-old is drinking her mother's breast milk, it's a different milk than the milk that was when the baby was only a month old. And that's true of cow's milk too. And what I learned recently from Alan Goldhammer in a talk he gave, when you're pregnant and when you've recently given birth, the hormones running through your system naturally, not added, just naturally are really high. You know how emotional people are when they're after they've given birth or when they're pregnant. Our hormones are just running rampant when we're pregnant. The same thing is true of cows. And because they keep taking milk from pregnant cows, milk is naturally so high in hormones that Dr. Goldhammer thinks it's one of the causes that breast cancer is so prevalent, because people are eating so much cheese that comes from cows who were pregnant when they were lactating. They don't stop lactating when they're pregnant the way we normally do, because they are bred to keep lactating when they're pregnant. So we're drinking milk and eating cheese is just running hormones through our system, and they're not even human hormones. They're hormones of a different species running havoc with our hormonal system. Another reason why you shouldn't miss Miyoko's talk at 12:30, because, I mean, she's the answer to all of these ills of the dairy industry. Where was I? Someone else had a question. Did you?
I have a question about like anemia. My mom is anemic. She's vegetarian. She's tried eating things, but she's anemic, so it seems like she has trouble with protein. And I'm just curious about
Isn't anemia iron deficiency? It's iron, yeah.
But you get a lot of iron, I think, in different.
I think the thing that I have to confirm this, I need to look it up in my book, but one of the foods with highest in iron are dried fruits, like dried figs and dried raisins and figs and dates, and all those dried fruits are supposed to be very high in iron. Molasses is high in iron. Spinach is high in iron. Popeye. Anyway, I know there are foods that are particularly high in different things. I'm not the food scientist in the book. My co-author Ginny is, but it's all in here. It's all in here. But I want to just say, true confession, I will confess this book is not perfect. I'm going to tell you its major flaw. And the more people who buy it, the sooner we can fix the flaw, because in the next printing they promise to fix it. The index is really horrible. We did not provide the index. We provided it to the publisher who came up with their index, and they were under great pressure, and they did an index that I think is horrible. I can't even use it. And if you want a recipe from the index, you basically have to go to the word recipes. And then under recipes, you might find what you're looking for. And I say you might find it because we have a recipe in here called Ray Sikora's Crock Dip. I made it here last year when I gave a talk. And I would have made it again. Silly me. I thought, well, everyone had it last year. I shouldn't make it again. But everyone loved it last year, so I could have made it again. Anyway, it's very cheesy. It's made with nutritional yeast and cashews and lemon juice. Anyway, Ray's Crock Dip is called Ray's Crock Dip, R-A-E. And if you ate it and you liked it, you want to make it again. It's really hard to find unless you remember the name Ray. Who's going to remember the name Ray? It should be under dips. It should just be under dips. Anyway, it's a really dippy index. So I apologize in advance if indeed you can't find it in the index. You'll just have to flip through. But anyway, we do have charts and recipes about things that are high in this and things that are high in that and how to get your protein, but I haven't memorized them. I just remembered that dried fruit and molasses, spinach, and there are other foods that are very high in iron. But the thing about a vegan diet in general is you should eat a variety of foods. You can't get on a kick and just eat the same things over and over again. Most people who go to restaurants, I found out, order the same thing every time. Has anyone done that? You ever have a favorite restaurant? Every time you go there, you order. I always order the butternut squash ravioli when I go to that Italian restaurant, Sorella's. Every time. And I always say I should try something else and go, why? It's why I'm here. I'm here because I like the way they make that. But there's a new restaurant in Marin County that's a chain in Southern California. I think there's one in Mountain View or San Jose called Veggie Grill. Veggie Foods. It's a chain in Southern California. I've eaten there in Santa Monica. I've eaten there in LA.
veggie.
I've eaten there in Veggie Grill.
Yes.
And I've eaten there in Palm Springs. And they opened one in Corte Madera. And it's almost like a joke because every time I go, I run into the same people and we say to each other, "You're here again? You're here again?" My goal is to eat something different every time I go there. And their menu is enormous. And they have chicken and they have, they don't have steak, they have hamburgers, they have chicken, it's all vegan. It's made by Gardein. They have different chickens. They have nacho. What do you call that? Nachos. Nachos. They have nachos with like the corn chips with cheese and guacamole. Everything's vegan. They have chicken nuggets, but they call it chicken CHIKIN, chicken, and it's made by Gardein. And they have crab cakes. I mean, there are so many things on that menu to try. And they have kale salads, 3 different kinds of kale salads. Every time I go, I'm ordering something different. I've only been there 3 times. And the best thing is you can take a picture of your receipt. They have an app. You go to the app on the smartphone, and every time you eat there, take a picture of your receipt. Tell them what store it was, and you get points. And the points accumulate. You get a free appetizer, you get free soup, you get a free dessert. Every time I go now, I get a free something because I take a picture. And now I didn't use it the other day because I'm saving up so I can treat someone to a whole free meal because you get enough points and you don't have to pay for your meal. So the one that I go to is in Corte Madera in Marin County. There's not one in San Francisco. There's one in Mountain View. And they're all over Southern California. But it's like a fast food restaurant. It's kind of like a McDonald's, but beautifully designed and all vegan. All vegan. And the soups are marvelous. They had a cream of asparagus soup that I'm going to try. Veggie Grill. Veggie Grill.
Have you been to Source?
Yes, Source is lovely. Source is lovely. Now, how many people here live in San Francisco? Wow, the minority. In San Francisco, I love Source and I love Chaya. Berkeley and San Francisco have a great vegan Japanese restaurant called Chaya. But where does everyone else live? Okay, who lives in the South Bay, south of San Francisco? How about East Bay? East Bay. Okay. It's amazing. This Bay Area is really rich with resources. So Berkeley has a lot of great vegan restaurants, and the city has a lot of great vegan restaurants. Marin County only has 2. One of them is this new chain that's Veggie Grill, and one of them is in San Rafael called Radiance, and it's lovely. It's very much like Potala in Albany. Does anyone know about Potala in Albany? Right over the Richmond Bridge on San Pablo. Right on San Pablo at Marin. You come over the Richmond Bridge, and that's Marin Street. Well, I'm sorry, you get off on Buchanan, and it becomes Marin Street. You make the first right on the Buchanan exit, you go left, you make the first right on San Pablo, and on your left is a restaurant called Potala. And what it is they only have one menu per day, like a soup, a vegetable, a salad, a dessert, and you can just say, I want the whole thing, and for like $10 you get the whole plate with everything they're serving that day. And similarly, there's a place in San Rafael called Radiance that's similar. You can get a large bowl or a small bowl, a large plate or a small plate, and you get one of everything they made that day. And it's Indian influence. They're Indian spices, but it's delicious food. So now Marin has 2 vegan restaurants. But the world is changing. Hope Bohannock, who's also speaking today and wrote a wonderful book about animal rights, she's doing a talk about the history of veganism and how far we've come, and she asked if I had any statistics. And I said, I don't have statistics, but I have a story you're welcome to use for your talk, and that's this. When I first became a vegan in 1986, I owned every vegan cookbook that existed that I could find. One of them is an old one from the 1940s or 50s called 10 Talents. Remember that? It's a classic. That's an old macrobiotic book from like the late 40s, early 50s, I think. And it's very simple. I still use it. I mean, if you need a very simple go-to recipe for basic stuff, that book's great. Then The Farm came out with a vegetarian cookbook. It's a commune that's still happening in Tennessee. And the book publishing company that publishes all these great vegetarian books is an outgrowth of that. But then Jennifer Raymond published her book, The Peaceful Palate, and that's the book that changed my life. I met Jennifer when I lived in Palo Alto, and she was the first vegan I ever met. And I used to go to her potluck dinners in a church basement, and she changed my life. She was like, you can do this. These recipes are easy. The ingredients are all available at Safeway. You don't have to go to a natural food store.
How come she didn't write more cookbooks? That Peaceful Palate is a wonderful.
That's my favorite cookbook ever. And many of her recipes, with her permission, many of her recipes are repeated in here. I love Jennifer's book. Jennifer Raymond now lives up on the Lost Coast, which is somewhere south of Eureka on the west coast, and it's called the Lost Coast because it's not easy to get to. I went there once. Tiny, windy roads. It's south of the border of Oregon, but it's way west, way west. She is now the director of an animal clinic. She does spay and neutering of dogs and cats. She's a big proponent of getting the whole county to spay and neuter. They do low-cost spay and neuter. And she owns 7 horses, 5 dogs, 3 cats. I mean, she has a menagerie. And she lives on a lot of land. So she's not around anymore in the sense of in the Bay Area, but she's still very committed to all this. And she's the kindest person. With both books, I called her and said, I'd like to use some of your recipes. She goes, any recipes you want, all the recipes you want, you have my unconditional permission. So we used a lot of her recipes. And then the publisher, of course, you need written permission for each recipe by name and which book it was in. I said, but she has this blanket, we can use anything. Not enough. So I had to go back to her and apologize and say, here are the recipes we're using. Could you please just sign these 7 letters saying, yes, you can use this recipe, yes, you can use that recipe. Anyway, I love Jennifer Raymond. She's foolproof. You cook anything from her cookbooks and nothing can ever go wrong.
Can you talk about the B12?
B12, yes. There should be no controversy with B12. Anyone who's a vegan needs to take B12 supplements, period.
And what kind of do you recommend?
Well, there's a kind that
Because the one that I saw at Trader Joe's, it has, they have, the ingredient is milk.
You buy a B12 supplement that says suitable for vegetarians. I buy it at Whole Foods. It says suitable for vegetarians, and it says sublingual. You can chew them or put them under your tongue. And that should be fine. If you're eating fortified food with B12, get your B12 level checked. I was a vegan for about 6 years, and I had very tingly fingers and was losing sensation in my fingers and my toes. And I went to the doctor, and I was virtually depleted of B12. I had none, because we didn't know back then. In 1986, nobody told you need to supplement. And that's nerve damage that often can't be reversed. If I hadn't I needed to get shots to get up to a normal level, and then I've been supplementing nonstop since. But it's a very inexpensive supplement. You can get it at Whole Foods, you can get it online, you can get it at most supermarkets.
Can you say,
Which one, Rainbow? Yeah. Just look for one that says suitable for vegetarians.
the one from Whole Foods that you mentioned is called what?
I think it's Whole Foods brand, and it says suitable for vegetarians. But I haven't gotten that one in a long time. I think the one I get is either Solgar or Veg Life. But they all make them, and they're mostly vegan. But you do need to supplement with B12 if you're going to be a vegan.
Why would you hesitate when it says suitable for vegetarian?
Because they often put animal products in with the pill. That's all. It's just that you don't want some of them come with ingredients made from milk, or some of them come from ingredients made from stuff you don't want to eat.
Like gelatin.
Gelatin, yeah. If sometimes capsules have gelatin in them. So if it says suitable for vegetarians, it's okay, but there's nothing secret about it. It's just products you don't want to eat. Which brings me to organics. How many people try to eat organic whenever you can? Okay, it's more expensive, but it really ticks me off that what we're paying more for is to have less of something. But that proves to me the power of corporations, these big corporations that make these chemicals, like the Dow Corporation and Monsanto. They are trying to find ways to get that product out there any way they can. And if it's dumping it on food, that's what they'll do. So somebody sent me an email of the Colbert Show last week where he asked people on the street, do you avoid GMOs? And almost everyone said, yes, when I can, I try to. Blah, blah. And then he said, do you know what a GMO is? And nobody could say what GMO stood for. Modified organism. Right, but no one could come up with the organism. Even people who knew genetically modified say, genetically modified, uh-oh. It's like they didn't know. But it's such a simple concept to me. Even though we have to pay more for it now, we are paving the way to not have to pay more for it in the future, because as more and more people realize that we don't want to eat these toxic chemicals that are sprayed on our food, and we don't want to eat genetically modified organisms in our food without at least labeling so we have a choice, we're changing the future. That's why I love being a vegan and being a conscious consumer. We are changing the future. We really are. I mean, not in a way, in the past, our parents and grandparents had very few things they could do besides raising us. They had very few things they could do to change the future. But every meal we eat and every choice we make at the supermarket is a vote that the corporations pay attention to. So supermarkets are finding out that people want organics. Supermarkets are finding out that people don't want to eat GMOs. And the Bay Area is leading the way. We were the first. California now banned plastic bags. How cool is that? But has anyone noticed, as I did, this is a personal observation, has anyone else noticed that since town by town we have banned plastic bags at the grocery store, more and more companies are packaging their salads in plastic boxes? The plastic industry will not take no for an answer. So if we say we're not going to let you make those plastic bags, there are 2 companies now, Organic Girl is one, and there's another one where you can buy these huge plastic bins filled with pre-washed, washed 3 times, spinach or kale or collards, or, all these microgreens and salad greens come pre-washed in a big plastic bin. And I'm trying to minimize my use of plastic. It's virtually impossible. The plastic industry just does not want to give up a dime. So as we ban plastic bags, look in the supermarket. You can buy pre-washed, as if it's so hard to wash greens, but pre-washed spinach, pre-washed baby kale, pre-washed all these little microgreens, pre-washed salad greens, and they're in plastic bins that don't biodegrade. Now, they say they're recyclable. Recycling to me is like this big boondoggle because we're buying more plastic and using more plastic and plastic bottles. If you know anyone who still drinks out of plastic bottles, please buy him or her a reusable water bottle. But there is so much plastic being continually produced, and then they say we make jackets out of it, we make vests out of it. Well, how much stuff can we keep making? It's ridiculous. We're just overrunning the planet with too much stuff. The New York Times had an article recently. I am so off subject, I'm sorry. The New York Times had an article recently about how the plastic floating in our oceans has gotten bigger and bigger. There used to be 3 gyres. They're called gyres, G-Y-R-E-S, these giant like continents of floating plastic. There used to be 3 of them. Now there are like 5 of them. And they're the size of, almost the size of, bigger than Texas. They're like the size of the entire Midwest. And they're just plastic. And a lot of them are the residue from plastic production. They're these little beads that end up coming off everything made of plastic because the mold has all these parts that fall apart. So we are swimming and living and eating food from a very toxic environment. And that's why I love being a vegan. We are affecting the future. We are saying no to all of this consumerism. I recommend not buying produce in plastic bins that are pre-washed 3 times. Because that plastic, the planet is paying a price for that plastic. And who knows about storing our food in plastic? I mean, it's probably not a great idea. And if you do use plastic bags, as I do, because I buy my tofu in bulk, and I put them in a plastic bag, I reuse that bag until it's falling apart. I mean, the print is off the bag. If it said the name of the store, it's gone. We have to do more to reduce and reuse and not put so much emphasis on recycling. Everyone thinks that by being a recycler, we're doing something for the environment. But reducing and reusing is much more important than recycling. We need to have less to recycle so that we're using less. I remember when I lived in San Francisco, and I'm sure some of you fall in this category, I would meet people who ride their bike everywhere and don't own a car. Hallelujah. That's like huge. Then I would meet people who don't use any plastic. To me, that's like, if you want to challenge yourself to something difficult, veganism's easy. You want to challenge yourself to something difficult, try to go a month without using plastic. Without buying it, without bringing it in your house, without tearing off a plastic bag for your produce. It is phenomenally hard to avoid plastic. It's in everything. The vitamin B12 that I buy, I try to buy it in glass jars. Even the glass is a huge investment of materials and is something that's going to go into a landfill or at least be recycled. But it's very hard to avoid plastic. Shampoo, it's hard to buy in anything but plastic. Hair rinse. I was going to say cream rinse. What's the conditioner? Thank you. Conditioner. You can't buy personal products. Even Kiss My Face makes this a cream I use for my hands. Comes in plastic bottles. It's really hard to go a month without using plastic. And I challenge anyone to do it. If you do it, let me know. My email address, and everyone's welcome to this. If you think of a question I didn't answer today, feel free to email me. My email address is eatplants@earthlink.net. eatplants@earthlink.net. And I'm happy to take questions on email if you have them in the future. Yes?
A question about coconut oil. There's all this controversy about that. I was just listening to the radio and they're talking about how good it is, and then I went on Michael Greger's site, he says, don't, it's too high in saturated fat. So what is...
I'm only going to tell you my opinion because I'm not a scientist and I don't know. Palm oil and coconut oil are trendy. And that trend is killing our planet because we're cutting down deciduous forests and land to grow palm trees exclusively. Monocultures are never a good idea. But the demand for palm oil and coconut oil is so high now that we're destroying the planet to produce it for Western demand. I don't think coconut or coconut water or coconut oil is the miracle it's touted to be. I am of the theory that there is no one miracle food. Everyone gets into like goji berries or coconut oil. Everyone discovers the miracle food that's like the powerhouse food. I think traditional food is the powerhouse food, a varied diet. There's nothing wrong once in a while of having coconut sprinkled on something you're making. You know, I'm not against coconut. But this trend to like go to coconut butter or use palm oil, I've stopped using Earth Balance. Is that what it's called?
Yes. Vegan margarine.
The vegan margarine, because it's made with palm oil. And when I read what palm oil is doing to our country, to our world rather, our addiction to these unhealthy foods, we're finding vegan ways to meet that demand, but it's at the price of hurting the planet. And it hurts animals because we're destroying habitat. We're making these forests of just palm trees. So I don't like any new touted miracle food. I love old-fashioned food that's just good for you. Fruits and vegetables, whole grains and legumes, nuts and seeds. That's it. It's so simple. And I think a return to simplicity would do our planet good, not just in terms of what we're eating, but in terms of what we're consuming. With the exception of vegetarian propaganda t-shirt like this vintage one from PETA from like, I don't know how many years ago, I tend to buy most of my clothes, except shoes and underwear. I buy virtually any clothes at reuse stores, thrift stores. The Bay Area has fabulous thrift stores where you can buy designer clothes or the kind I wear, just like any clothes. But there's absolutely no reason to be using cotton, which is one of the most heavily sprayed crops with pesticides. There is absolutely no reason to be buying new clothes when other people get tired of it and just give it away. It's new to you. And in fact, I just heard this concept recently, shopping in your own closet, where you go to your own closet and look at things you haven't worn in a long time and pretend you just found it at a great flea market and find a new way to use it. Find a new scarf to put with it or find a new combination you never thought of. It's the best thing to do for the planet. If you want to have an interesting party with your friends, do a clothing swap. Find people to bring clothes they don't wear anymore in the same size, right? But a lot of clothes, it doesn't matter what size it is, like scarves and belts, you know. Anyway, I want to get back to the book for 1 minute, just because that was my talk. So I only got to the first of 5 myths that we bust in the book. So vegetarian foods do not need to be combined to provide a complete protein. Myth number 2, athletes cannot be vegetarian. There's a whole magazine out now called Vegan Athlete or something, or Vegan some. Anyway, most of the strongest runners and bodybuilders and mega triathlon athletes in the world, there are vegans now of every stripe who are very strong athletes. Myth number 3 is one of my favorites. Vegans have to worry about nutrients at every meal. We don't worry about nutrients at every meal any more than an omnivore worries about nutrients at every meal. We eat good food, eat a variety of it, eat enough of it, make sure it's real food, you're getting enough nutrients. And myth number 4, it's too hard to be vegan. I think it's too hard to have heart disease. I think it's too hard to have cancer. I think it's too hard to have diabetes. Eating vegan, you have to eat anyway. You have to eat anyway. It doesn't take any more time to eat vegan than it takes to eat things that are bad for you. So the reason that all these other diet books like Atkins and Wheat Belly, the reason they do so well is because all of them tell you to stop eating processed food, which is a good thing. I'm not promoting those books. But people feel better when they stop eating all the processed food. Now, years ago, somebody asked, I think it was Michael Clapper, how do you know what a processed food is? What's your definition of processed food? And I love his definition. Look at the ingredients list. And if there are any, it's not. If it has an ingredients list, it's a processed food. If there are no ingredients listed, it's a whole food. So if you buy a potato, there are no ingredients. It's just a potato. If you buy beets, it's just beets. There are no ingredients. It's beets. You buy frozen blueberries or frozen mangoes. Look at the ingredients. It's just blueberries. It's just mangoes. Lately, I've been very conscious of the fact that every one of those bags of frozen blueberries I eat all year is a plastic bag that goes in the trash when I'm done. So now, when blueberries are in season, I try to buy way more than I could eat, and I freeze them myself, which is hard with a regular refrigerator because I just have a small freezer up there. But it is packed to the gills with summer fruit because I know I can't get it in the winter and I don't want to be buying it in plastic bags. But as I said, I challenge you to go 30 days without using plastic. It is virtually impossible. Yes?
Don't the blueberries come in plastic?
Yes, but you can get more of them when you're buying them fresh. You can buy a flat of them than having to buy the individual bags that are only 8 ounces each. Yes, and that's another thing that ticks me off. And I spent years arguing with my local natural food store. They're so non-GMO and they're all organic all the time, and yet they sell everything in plastic. Even when I was a kid, blueberries came in cardboard boxes. And if you bought a flat of them, they weren't a series of small cardboard boxes in a big box. It was just a big cardboard box with blueberries in it. Now, even if you buy a flat of them, they're plastic boxes of blueberries. I'm telling you, the plastic industry really and truly is one of the major obstacles we have to a healthy planet. I mean, in my view. And I think...
You go to farmer's market.
Farmer's market, even at farmer's market, you buy blueberries there, they come in plastic boxes. At least the farmer's markets I go to. They're plastic boxes.
I see them in boxes.
I don't know what to do with those little green boxes that even cherry tomatoes come in. What do you do with them? They're not recyclable. They're like little...
To the schools.
Well, my new thing is I'm bringing them back to where I bought them and say, you deal with them. Bring them back. Bring them back.
Yeah.
Bring them back and say, you deal with it. I don't want to be the one throwing this out. And that's a whole movement in the ecological movement of trying to get the producer to take responsibility for the entire life cycle of everything they produce. So by bringing it back to where you bought it and saying, why are you selling it in plastic? Why don't you use cardboard for this? They'll say, that's how they bring it to me. I say, well, here are mine. Deal with it and apply some pressure on your supplier. Let me get through this list. Okay, the fifth myth is that it's too expensive to be vegan. Again, having heart disease, having cancer, having diabetes is very expensive. Eating vegan can be very cheap. And I want to recommend a book called, it's by Ellen Jaffe Jones. Speaking of athletes, she's a really strong athlete and has won medals in her age category. Ellen Jaffe Jones wrote a book called Eat Vegan on $4 a Day. And it's a brilliant book. Because it teaches you that if you go to the big box stores like Costco, or I don't know anything else like Costco, but in Florida they have one called BJ's. But anyway, if you go to a big box store and you buy in bulk organic rice and organic beans, you save a fortune. And if you base most of your meals around rice and beans, and this book has dozens of fabulous recipes that are based on rice and beans for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner, you save a fortune. And she does the math and tells you how much per portion, per serving, per day you're paying. And you can eat very well as a vegan on under $4 a day. So she busts all those myths about it's too expensive to be vegan. It's also not expensive to be vegan if you're eating traditional foods like rice and beans in the South or corn. There are foods that are very reasonably priced. And if you grow it yourself, you save a fortune. If you grow your own herbs, you save a fortune. If you buy your herbs and spices in bulk, you save a fortune. I've bought a jar of almost every spice you can think of, but that was like 25 years ago, and I'm using the same jar. I just bring it and refill it. And it's way cheaper to buy any of those herbs, cinnamon, oregano. I mean, they're really, really inexpensive if you're buying them in bulk. In fact, what did I have to buy the other day? It said 70, there was a big article on Michael Greger's website about how once a month we should each be eating 4 Brazil nuts. So I went with my mother when I was visiting her in Florida. We went to Whole Foods and we each bought 4 Brazil nuts. And I'm looking at the once a month only because they're too high in selenium. So just once a month, pick a day of the month. And it's every month on the 16th, my mother and I are both going to eat 4 Brazil nuts. But what's funny is I looked at it and it was like something like $75 a pound. I mean, that was like ridiculously expensive. And I bought 8 Brazil nuts and it cost me less than $1.50. And it's supposed to, according to Michael Greger, it's supposed to lower your cholesterol and it lasts for a month. But because they're high in selenium, you should not do this more than once a month. But he suggested once a month eat 4 Brazil nuts. So I bought them at Whole Foods in a plastic bag. But you know, lately I've been bringing paper bags with me and using them instead of plastic for everything except tofu because that's wet. Anyway, so those are the 5 myths we bust in this book. I want to read a few more things from the table of contents because I really think that we don't have the table of contents I wanted. Okay, we talk about how and why we age, a healthy diet for 50 plus vegans, and vegan diets for healthy life. But one of the things that I talked about a little bit before, we talk about relationship dynamics and how they change. How when you're eating in a room alone, you're just eating, but then a vegan shows up and suddenly you're a meat eater, and it changes everything. Well, families often push back when you become a vegan. Some people through the book, we tell stories of people who did turn vegan after 50. We have different stories in their own words of about 12 different people who turned vegan after they were 50. And then the publisher, when we turned in the manuscript, said, those are great stories, but we haven't heard from the 3 of you. So Carol and Ginny and I had to go back and give little essays ourselves, very short, answering certain questions like, what inspired us to go vegan? Or what did we first learn that made it easier to go vegan? Or what do we have in our closet? Or where do we like to shop, and how do we share our veganism with others. So each of us tells our own personal story too. But what we found from a lot of people we spoke to is their adult children rebelled, didn't like that their parents went vegan because they'd come home for Thanksgiving. That happened to you? Kids come home for holidays and they expect the traditional meals that you've made their whole lives, and suddenly it's like, I'm not doing that. And it's really hurtful when your kid is screaming at you, and your adult child is saying, what do you mean you're not having turkey at Thanksgiving? How can you not have turkey at Thanksgiving? Anyway, we talk about that, and we talk about ideas for how to have that conversation less than antagonistically, and how to explain, listen, I'm not doing this for you, it's not about you, and if you want to have turkey, please feel free to make your own turkey. I'll even give you grandma's recipes. You can have all the recipes you love that I used to make. I just can't do it anymore. And here's why, and I hope you'll support me. But I'm not asking you to change. It's just in my house, this is what I'm cooking. If you want to cook something else, you're welcome to bring it. But it's an interesting thing when you have to argue with your adult children because you made a healthier change. But it also happens with friends who uninvite you, and routines you've had for years where there are couples that always went out to dinner after a game of cards. And suddenly the other couples don't want to go out with you because they think you ask too many questions of the waiter. Or you're always vetoing the restaurant they want to go to. So we talk about that. It happens. We can't pretend that it's easy peasy, everybody just go vegan. Social relationships are important. In fact, the AARP magazine or somewhere recently had an article where somebody said, it's better to eat, let me see how it is. It's better to eat potato chips with friends than eat kale alone at home. I mean, I could argue with that. But the point they were trying to make is social relationships are important. And it's just as important for longevity to have friends and go out and have social things to do than it is to eat like a purist. But I'm saying you don't have to choose. There are ways to approach your friends and your family when you're making this change that can keep them in the loop with you and have them cheering for you. Yes?
You know what, and another interesting thing is I decided that when I take my adult daughters out and one is vegetarian, not vegan, that I won't pay for her unless she's vegan. My sister thought that was the worst thing. How can you do that?
Everyone finds her own way. I mean,
she doesn't care. My daughter says I'm going to eat vegetarian, I'll pay my own. She doesn't care what my sister thinks. It's just...
Well, family members are never going to see things the way we do. Never. That's like a rule of thumb. Did anyone ever see, now I said I'm not on Facebook, but if it's something really good, all my friends send it to me anyway and say was on Facebook. There was a thing last year, it was a cartoon panel with stick figures. And it was two friends talking. And in the first panel, the man tells his friend, I'm going out for a smoke. And his friend says, okay. In the second panel, he tells his friend, I'm going to McDonald's. His friend says, okay. In the third panel, he says, I'm going out for a six-pack. His friend says, okay. In the fourth panel, he says, I'm becoming a vegan. His friend says, what are you, crazy? What about B12? Where are you going to get your protein? Where are you going to get your calcium? There was a woman arrested for raising her child a vegan as child abuse. I mean, it was a very funny cartoon because really society turns a blind eye if you want to drink beer and if you want to drink wine and if you want to smoke cigarettes and if you want to eat meat, nobody cares. And as soon as you say you're going vegan, suddenly everyone's concerned about your health. It's just so funny.
Well, it's interesting that AARP used something that's associated with vegetarianism, veganism, to make a point about social isolation, as opposed to they could have used something else, and that reinforces,
the stereotype that you're going to be eating home alone because you want to eat healthy. Yes.
Yeah, because you want to be healthy.
Right, right.
And I find that unfortunate, particularly for someone like AARP.
I'm not sure it was them. I don't want to defame them. It may not have been AARP. It could have been something else. I don't know where it was, but I read it recently, and I thought it's an interesting false choice. There are all kinds of false choices. You don't really have to choose between your friends and your veganism. In fact, I was not the only vegan at my high school reunion. I went to my 40th reunion a few years ago, and I thought I'd be the only vegan, but I wasn't. There were at least 3 of us, and I knew one, but there was another one. But what's really interesting was, talk about never agreeing with friends or with family, I made a bet with my husband, and I won it. I was the only woman there. We had 800 people in my graduating class, so there were over 200 people at the reunion. I was the only one in the entire room who had gray hair of the women. Oh my God. Yeah. And that's a cultural thing. I live in California where it's okay to age naturally, and to me it's like, what are you hiding? I mean, who are you trying to fool? It's like, I'm proud of every year I lived, and if I earned gray hair, then I earned it. But the fact is, every single woman from my high school class, every single one, did not one strand of gray hair in the entire group of hundreds of people. And to me, that's an analogy in that you have to walk your own path. When I go to Florida and visit my mother, a friend of hers once came up to me. We were waiting to go see a movie. And her friend said, "Are you Fran's daughter?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Shame on you." So what do you mean, shame on me? She goes, "You have gray hair and your mother doesn't. How do you think that makes your mother feel?" I go, "You know what? I'm okay with however it makes her feel because she made her choice and I made my choice. Nobody's fooling her. She has a daughter who's 60, and if she can't deal with that without gray hair, that's fine." But veganism is similar. It's like we make our choices because they're right for us, and we don't have to please other people. There are ways to make peace with other people, and there are ways to keep our friendships and our family relationships healthy and secure. But we don't have to do it at the expense of our ethical choices. I started as a vegan for health reasons. Fit for Life was like a health manifesto. But over the years, I've evolved to be an animal rights kind of vegan. And to me, health is important. And as I say, I'm eating a healthier and healthier diet every year. But to me, it's all about not hurting others. And we have such a huge impact. It's the only argument, I just want to say, it's the only argument vegans have that cannot be argued. Nobody can argue the ethics of not wanting to cause harm. They can argue where you get your B12, and they can argue whether you have enough protein. They can argue whether you have a wheat belly. They can argue whether you have, but the thing about the paleo diet that really pisses me off is it's very, very selfish. It's very selfish. Because when you're worried only about your own health and you're focused only on your own concerns and your own health, your own weight, you're ignoring the fact that your food choices have an impact on every other being on the earth. The animals are suffering and dying. The oceans are dying. The rainforests are dying. We're cutting down habitat to grow food for cows rather than food for humans. We're losing biodiversity at a rate that's unheard of since the last great extinction. It's a very selfish mindset to think, I'm a vegan for health. Well, if you're a vegan for health, you're doing the right thing. But if you're a paleo person for health, or you're a wheat belly person for health, or you're a, what's his name? Who was the Zone, Atkins. All of those diets are very selfish.
What is the paleo diet? Quick.
It's people thinking that they can eat the way our ancestors did tens of thousands of years ago. It's a lot of meat. But again, it says very little processed food, so people feel better on it. But that's getting rid of the processed food. It's not about eating the meat. And basically, what's interesting is if you are a paleo fan, and there's a chain of gyms that promotes paleo. I think it's called, what's it called? It's like an ultimate workout gym. Anyway, there's a new book by the same woman who wrote Eat Vegan. This woman's brilliant with titles. There's a brand new book by Ellen Jaffe Jones, who wrote Eat Vegan on $4 a day, called Paleo Vegan. So if you want to be on the paleo diet, which is, I think, a lot of nonsense, trying to eat the way our ancestors did, and it's been debunked by people I trust and admire. There's nothing authentic about it. But if you want to eat the paleo diet, you can still be a vegan and do it. You can still be a vegan and do it. So to me, the common sense is, if your grandparents or great-grandparents doesn't recognize it as a food, it's not a food. Food isn't just what fits in our mouth and goes through our bodies. Food is what nourishes us. And if it's something your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize as food when you show it to her, then it's probably not food. Now, I will admit my grandmother would not have recognized a green smoothie. I love my green smoothies. And she would not know what the heck it is that I'm drinking. I could tell her it's spinach juice and she'd understand, But the fact is, it's made of whole foods. There's nothing in it she wouldn't recognize as a food. So my theory of eating, that's not what the book is. The book, as I said, is a combination of viewpoints. There are 3 authors, so there's recipes for every palate. And it has information that's good for everybody, whether you're over 50 or not. My favorite part of the book are the stories that we tell and the different ways we recommend communicating with other people. And it's not just us, because we do interview dozens of other people, and we hear their stories too.
I was wondering if you talk about calcium supplements for women over 50.
We talk about getting enough calcium. We don't talk about supplements. But any of the soy milks or rice milks or almond milks that are fortified with calcium have just as much calcium as cow's milk. And it's better for you. And 10 minutes? 10 minutes. So absorbing calcium is part of the problem. It's not just getting enough calcium. And we talk about ways to, I don't remember them, but I can reread those chapters. Dark leafy greens have lots of calcium in them. But you want to eat the dark leafy greens where you can absorb the calcium. So it's mostly like kale and collards. Chard and spinach, the calcium is not as available. if you want to make it more available, you're supposed to eat some citrus with it. So if you put in half an orange in the smoothie with the chard or the spinach, you're going to absorb more calcium. But the kale and the collards, the calcium is readily absorbable. And I recommend kale and collards as often as you can. Every time I make a soup, when I serve it, before I put it in the bowl, I put a handful of torn up kale or collards on the bottom of the bowl and just put the soup on top of it. And the hot soup softens it. So if you chop up kale and collards and just put it in the bottom of the bowl, put the soup on top, you're eating more kale and collards.
I heard one lecturer speak, though, and said that so many people said because, especially the spinach, you can't get calcium from it, so people weren't eating it, but chard and spinach have so many other minerals and
Oh,
vitamins,
exactly.
you should eat them for those reasons.
Right. No, you need chard and spinach. I'm just saying not for calcium, but you need them for the potassium and for everything else. The thing is, there's a wonderful book by T. Colin Campbell called Whole. He wrote the China study, but that's old. The more recent book is called Whole, W-H-O-L-E. He makes a very important point. Science gets its money, the researchers get money for studying smaller and smaller and smaller slices of the pie. So you can get a grant for studying how absorbable is the potassium versus the calcium in spinach, but you can't get a grant for studying how much more powerful is a plant food diet than statins for reducing heart attacks. You know, no one's looking at the big picture. And that whole book is about how reductionist science is making us all crazy because you're arguing these little details about little things that are totally lost. We're losing the forest for the trees. We're arguing about the shape of the leaf of the tree instead of saying we need a forest that looks like this. So I love the book Whole because he talks about how when you're in your own paradigm, you don't realize it's a paradigm. And medical schools, pharmaceutical companies, and consumers now think that medicine is the answer to everything. When in fact, medicine causes as many problems as it solves, because for every drug you take, there are side effects. And some old people are on like 20 drugs, and half of them are to counter the side effects of the other half of them. And it's true. And we're losing our minds faster than ever, and we're losing our ability to balance and falling down and breaking bones more than ever. And part of it is because our senior population is so drugged. We think drugs are the answer to everything. And so this book Whole was really good. I read a similar book about 25 years ago by Maggie Schaaf called Women's Reality. And it too talks about the paradigm we're in and how you can't see outside the paradigm. In Women's Reality, she says, if you are in the dominant paradigm in your culture, in our culture it's a white heterosexual man. If you're a person of color or you're gay or you're not a man, you're not in the paradigm that's the ruling paradigm, or if you're a vegan. Remind me to get back to that. But anyway, if you're not in the dominant paradigm, you mistake your reality for reality itself. You tend to think that what you think and the way you operate in the world is the right way. And if you're not in that paradigm, and every culture is different. Some African tribes, it's the tallest woman is the paradigm. If you're not in the dominant paradigm, you know that there are multiple realities. And you have to learn the rule of the dominant paradigm's reality, because you have to play by those rules. But it's not your personal reality. That's why the book is called Women's Reality. Women know there are more than one reality, but men, white heterosexual men in our culture, tend to dismiss those other realities as not important or not valid or flighty, or the adjectives used to dismiss arguments from different realities. Well, Whole is like that, but it's about the scientific world. And what I wanted to get back to is there's a marvelous comedian named Leifer, Carol Leifer. She used to write for Seinfeld. And I saw her do stand-up a few years ago when she opened her act and she said, I had to become a vegan because being a Jewish lesbian wasn't a small enough minority for me. I just thought that was hilarious. Anyway, I want to make sure, there are 3 left. There are 4 left. Did anybody not get one of these? Okay, there are 4 left. 1, 2, 3. Take a cracker. What's on it is, and that's smoked tofu from a brand called Tofu You. Did you get one?
Yeah.
Who didn't get one? Yeah. There are just a few left there.
Thank you very much.
Pardon me? No, the cracker is, what's on the cracker is, thank you very much. Thanks for coming. It's soaked almonds, cashews, soaked cashews with ginger and parsley. And and lemon juice, fresh lemon juice. That's it.
This is in the book, the recipe?
That's in the book. It's called Herbed Cashew Pate. And there is some smoked tofu left. This is the tofu that I was serving. It's from Tofu You, Y-U. It's available at most farmer markets, and that's smoked tofu, and I love it. But again, Miyoko has a smoked cheese that you will love. Go to Miyoko's event. Is she at 12 or 12:30? 12:15.
She also has a booth out in the main room.
Oh, great. Well, I'm selling my book if anyone wants it, and even if you don't want it, I thank you for coming. And thank you very much. I didn't realize I had such a long time to talk. I can't believe I almost did it, too.
So I get you're in charge of the North Bay Vegetarian.
Marin, Vegetarian Education.